and welcome to another episode of We're Not Wizards. It's time to settle down, get yourself a nice cup of tea, and let's get a little bit industry deep. This episode is going to be called it's not outside the box, it's not around the box, it's inside the box. And I'm joined tonight by Peter Blenkharn, who is one of the co-founders, directors, one of the creative forces behind Inside the Box Boardgames. So, good evening, Peter.
Hey, good evening.
And how are you this evening? You well?
Yeah, good. Thanks. A bit of a long day inside the box, so to speak. But yeah, it's good.
Well, you'll be glad to get actually outside the box and get outside for a little bit.
Yeah, sometimes I have to take myself out for a little walk. Usually playing Pokemon Go, if I'm honest.
Really, just to
get myself out of the office.
Well, it's a good way to go, and I can't think of a better way to do it than with a bit of Pokemon Go. The reason I've asked you on, well, for several reasons. I have mentioned this a couple of times on previous episodes, but you're basically one of the guys that runs the UK Kickstarter Facebook page. That was one of the first reasons, and secondly is because you also run your own games company, Inside the Box Boardgames. So we thought it would be a good idea to get you on and have a little chat about somebody who is out there and actually doing it and is very much part of the vibrant community of board games. Now, for those who are joining us for the first time, the reason that we do this is because there's quite simply not enough podcasts about board games.
Definitely.
And the second reason that we do this is because there's quite simply not enough podcasts delving deep into board game companies, as low as we can get. So that's the idea tonight. As we usually do, we like to find out a little bit about somebody's history with the hobby. So, Peter, what we're interested to know is, a little bit about your past, a little bit about what you've been doing just now, potentially a little bit about the future, but most of all, we'd like to start with a little bit about your history and your good self. So, how did you get into kind of the board games hobby kind of thing?
That's a good question. I guess I grew up on Games Workshop stuff as a lad. So I was probably about 12. I had those magazines for the Lord of the Rings miniatures game. We got a pack of goblins one week and a pack of Gondorian Rangers the next kind of thing. Got myself pretty far down the rabbit hole with Games Workshop until I was about 18. Mm-hmm. Went off to university, kind of stopped painting miniatures too much. I just didn't have the time really. And then around about my third year, Thirsty Meeples in Oxford, which is the first board game cafe in the UK, opened up.
Yes.
And me and my mates thinking, that's pretty cool. Not really seen anything like that before. And kind of dusted off my kind of board game kind of brain, I suppose. And then we ended up going there pretty much every week. Going and playing loads of different games, loads more kind of modern Euro games, as opposed to the kind of Monopoly, Articulate kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And kind of really got back into it because I had a few sort of Games Workshop. When I was really far down the rabbit hole with the Warhammer IP. Had a few sort of Games Workshop IP board games like Chaos in the Old World, sort of some of the Fantasy Flight stuff.
Have you still got your Chaos of the Old World?
Oh yes. Yeah, it's not leaving my
Have you now moved it from being on the shelf to being in a safety deposit box? Because I don't know if you've seen the prices on these bad boys now.
Oh yeah.
But I've seen them kind of they're approaching. They're actually approaching worth their weight in gold.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, it's a pretty weighty game as well. So
yeah, it's pretty.
I've actually got on the subject of random old games that are kind of attracting a good price these days. I got a copy of Pokemon Master Trainer, which again is attracting a few £100 on eBay these days, which is pretty cool. I can't possibly let the thing go because it's nostalgia trope heavy. But
so is that yours? You've had that since you bought it originally?
I think I've had Chaos in the Old World since I was about 16, and which is about 8 years ago now, and Pokemon Master Trainer since I was probably about 8. So it's back in the day, about 99, I think.
Did you have you kept it all nice and beautiful
Oh
looking.
no, it's completely smashed to pieces. I probably lost half the bits. Like, I mean, really did not learn to keep hold of my boxes in good nick at that point. But
you'll probably find there will be somebody that will be willing to pay a silly amount of money, no matter how kind of dented the box is, or anything
sure,
along those lines. There'll always be somebody that'll be asking, and they'll ask an obscure question like, if you turn it over, yeah, is the plastic nub bit, is that to the left or to the right? It's to the right. Oh, okay, I'll get back to you. So what else have you got in your collection that you're kind of you hopefully will help fund in help fund inside the box as time goes on?
I mean, to be honest, they were kind of my two sort of ones that I want to say like I brought from home. So I didn't really have a huge amount of sort of what we now call like proper board games, I suppose. I had Chaos in the Old World, had Pokemon Master Trainer, obviously I had like reams and reams of Games Workshop stuff.
Yeah.
I actually, one that I found on Board Game Geek the other day, which I really like to see, like, I want to say, like, in the context of all the stuff I do now, was Mandarin.
Yeah.
I think it was MB who published it. And it was just really cool, like, set collection, like, Zodiac game, had this little, like, Chinese hut in the middle of it. And you press this little lever, and these little tiles came out with, like, Zodiac symbols on them. You had to, like, collect the sets of them. I probably played that, like, a few hundred times with my, like, parents when I was younger. But it was really weird to see it on Board Game Geek, just, like, completely by chance. Sort of, you know, next to Scythe and, like, Terraforming Mars and stuff. It's really weird. Kind of connecting those two things together.
Well, I think when I did a kind of a chat with the guys that were doing the Sherlock Holmes kind of board game, the Kickstarter, it turned out that Jim had been working on the kind of Thunder Road, and that's on Board Game Geek. So it seems to be somebody's just cataloguing kind of board games as they go, and it gives you like the original art, and it's kind of pretty cool to kind of see that. So you hit university, you said third year. Started to get interested in games again.
Yeah.
Then what happened from then on? What was your path after that?
Yeah, so I guess me and my original business partner, Matthew, he studied chemistry. I did engineering, but, you know, massive nerds. And so we were spending most of our time at Thirsty Meeples, and then sort of loop around a year later to our fourth year, our final year, getting absolutely sick to death of doing revision and exam stuff is just really boring and hard. So we started spending even more time there, you know, a couple of times a week just for, you know, blow off some steam. And we were sat there chatting to the manager, Simon Reed. Really, really, really great guy. You'll probably see him at Expo wandering around looking stressed. But no, fantastic guy. But we were chatting to him about, you know, games in general, and he said, oh yeah, you know, it's like, I bet it's not that hard to make a game.
Was that like a challenge?
We were just like, I wonder, like, can we make a game? Like, it's nothing we'd ever really done before. I mean, we kind of put scraps of paper together of things, like, ages ago. Because we both went to the same school, and our history teacher had a strategy board games club on a Friday evening, which we went to, like, religiously for the entire time we were there. And we, you know, put bits of things together. They were pretty much, like, really old school Eurogame style things that didn't really work and were kind of rubbish. So it's kind of we're kind of in the habit of making bits of things, but never really taking it further than that. But obviously now, you know, we're like 20 odd years old. Like, we knew some things about some stuff, I guess.
Yeah. Well, you were invincible and you could conquer the world. So making a board game was going to be absolutely easy. And if you wanted to make that board game as complicated as you possibly could, then leave me alone, Grandad, because you know nothing at all.
yeah, exactly. But yeah, so what we did is we basically went back to, I think it was my, like, dorm room place, and then we just, like, started drawing some things and put some ideas together. Came up with this idea for this, like, absurdly complicated, like, way in over our heads, like, strategy fantasy thing. And like, it's kind of become one of those, like, sore points for me now, because we still haven't finished it, because we still haven't found the right kind of niche for it yet.
Well, I mean, Peter, we're not wizards. It's all about sharing. So I think what would be good now, and to help you cleanse, does it have a name?
It does. It's called Broken Shield.
Oh, right, okay. And what is it all about? Is this the broken shield that's on the website? Or is
it is. Yeah, it's still there. I'm kind of loath to take it down because it feels like I'm a bit in defeat. The key idea with it was, like, obviously I played 1,000,001 fantasy games before. Obviously, so a lot of Games Workshop stuff, which has very rich, kind of comprehensive sort of fantasy lore behind it.
Yeah.
But one thing I kind of wanted to do a little bit of was try and kind of strip back what the sort of fantasy genre is, and why is it that Tolkien came up with the characters and the races and the factions that he did? Why is it that the Games Workshop writers came up with the ones they did, which are a little bit different? Kind of looking at World of Warcraft and other kind of popular fantasy sort of worlds. What influenced them? In Tolkien's case, it was the fact, he's an English professor and read loads of Viking epic poetry, and all the kind of grandiose stuff kind of inspired him to write Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of Celtic imagery and all that kind of thing. It's rather than just taking an existing thing and kind of repasting some stuff on it, tweaking it a little bit, it's can we go back into that? The conclusion we kind of came to was that was going to be really difficult, but also that a lot of these old school fantasy genres had a lot of really quite dodgy influences, I want to say.
Okay.
When you burrow down into where they got their ideas for some of these things, you realize they're a bit off color.
Yeah.
It's
like try to read if you look at kind of original Conan and even if you look into kind of original kind of Greek Roman mythology and everything like that, there's a bit that's kind of some people nowadays would go, oh, that's a bit, but
it's a bit
part
off.
part of a history. So I know where you're coming from.
Yeah, and it's can we reimagine those fantasy ideas in a modern setting? Can we communicate? I mean, Tolkien was around in the sort of 30s and 40s, and he wrote with the context and all the crazy stuff that was going on around him.
Yeah.
Can we do the same thing? Can we talk about issues in the world around us, really abstractly through a fantasy setting? So it doesn't feel like you're getting a politics lesson or a lecture, but it feels like you're kind of talking about things, thinking about those ideas, maybe relating it to your experience of what's going on in, your country or whatever. Mm-hmm. We had some fairly high ideals at this point.
You were kind of was there brandy involved? I mean, was there smoking jackets and stuff? And were you ready to conquer the world?
Was Oxford, so it was a bit pretentious, but fortunately not. We were the sane end of the spectrum, I think.
Is the problem nowadays with say stripping back the fantasy genre and making a new race of creature? Is that pretty much most of the races of creatures have kind of already been imagined. So if you make a big hulking kind of, say, purple monstery type thing, you're going to get somebody that's going to look at it and go, that's an orc, mate. No, it's not. It's not. We've called it something else. We've called it a grak. No, that's an orc, and you've just said the word bucket in orc as well, kind of thing. So you've got that kind of danger. So, where is Broken Shield at the moment? How have you left it? Where is it? What kind of state is it in? Is it still broken?
It's pretty broken. The first thing we came up with is basically kind of asymmetrical kind of grid movement area control game.
Yeah.
It doesn't really warrant explaining because it was a bit crap. But then kind of came up with a more abstract thing. It was basically the idea was it was all based around sieges.
Right.
So it's about the idea that you're in this broken world where everyone's got all these political struggles that are kind of vaguely based on the kind of things we have in modern day society, but in a fantasy setting. And the crux of it is everyone's kind of holding themselves up in these castles, fortresses, whatever, caverns. And the main game is essentially battling it out, trying to take resources from someone else by, getting through to that castle.
Yeah.
So there's a kind of campaign level to it and a sort of real-time level to it, sort of kind of like medieval Total War video game, that kind of thing.
All right,
you can kind of engage with it on a kind of grand strategy level as well as kind of the individual sort of field battles and sieges. So we kind of had these very big, very grandiose ideas for what it was going to be. At the moment, I have a lot of scribbles, a lot of spreadsheets that don't really have any information in them, and a lot of like bits and bobs of things. Obviously, got some of the artwork when we got very excited about it. Got very close, I think, but then kind of fell apart, which unfortunately is how a lot of games go. You get very far, or what you think is very far into the sort of the meat of the project, and then you realise it's not going to work.
Yeah,
which is a bit of a shame, obviously.
Is it going to be like the guy that goes out and buys a 1974 Ford Cortina that is a shell of a car, and then spends the next kind of 32 years kind of fixing it up until at the grand old age of 65 he rolls it out of the driveway and it's there for everybody to see? Is this going to be your pet project that you keep picking away at, I guess?
I think it probably will be. Like, I think it's a bit of a weird one now, because it the original conceit of the project, like it still fits within the kind of like the remit of the things that we want to do. Like,
yeah.
One of the things I did recently was bought some T-shirts for conventions and stuff. And I thought it'd probably be a good idea to have some kind of slogan that goes in the back, as well as like the ITV logo on the front. And I was trying to think, like, what is it that knits together all the different things that we do? Like, why do I keep coming up with ideas like the ones I do? And like, basically, they're all really pretentious. Like, I'm going to be straight up. Like, they're all like games that kind of mess with people a little bit.
Yeah.
Like they have some kind of like idea behind them. With Molecular, our first published game, it was about trying to make a complicated scientific topic seem accessible and interesting.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was more about education than anything. With Statecraft, which is the one we published in the summer, it was all about engaging people with political systems and political ideas without making it seem partisan. So, like, trying to remove people's biases from the equation.
Yeah, yeah.
With Subterra, the next one, it was about like how to communicate fear, and how you can mess with people's minds in the same way you would do in a movie screening of like a nasty horror film, when you're in a brightly lit room with your mates with a couple of cans of beer open and you're playing a board game. Like, is it possible to recreate that? So they're all kind of like these lofty ideas, I want to say. Like, those are things that kind of get us excited. And with Broken Shield, it's like, I want to say, as the project developed, we kind of lost that a little bit. We got a bit too bogged down in developing artwork, developing the game system, that kind of thing, and kind of forgot the reason that we started the project was to make this, I want to say, like, counter-genre fantasy game that kind of shakes up the idea a little bit. And I think, to be honest, like we didn't know enough about the whole thing to really be able to do that effectively. In terms of game design, in terms of like writing, world building, that kind of thing. So a bit out of our depth, really. But
so, I think, did you and Matthew then put this to bed and then think, well, what else can we do? Or was it a case that more interesting things kind of took over from it, and it got kind of put to the side more and more and more?
I think it's probably a combination of both, to be honest. Like, obviously, there was a kind of feeling that we were out of our depth with the project. Like, we kind of got to a point where we realised we're not going to be able to finish this to a level that we're happy with by the time we run out of money.
Yeah, okay.
Or time. It's going to be the kind of thing where we just like we just can't. We don't feel like we can do this, and that kind of it took a bit of a toll. I think like it got a bit like it felt like it was dragging. And that wasn't, it wasn't exciting for us. We couldn't feel enthusiastic about the project. We thought it's probably best to leave this one for a while, come back to it later. I think at that point we thought later was going to be a couple of months' time rather than probably a couple of years.
When it is just now, because it is on the site, and I've had a little look, and you've got like you've got a map, a nice little. It looks like it's the old. I've done a ye olde worldy map, so I've written some stuff and then got the T out and painted the T on it to make it look cool. So it's like being back at like second year in high school when you do your first kind of history lesson report.
Oh yeah, I know exactly what you mean. You get the little lighter to burn the edges on it.
Well,
that kind of thing.
There was always some kid that like decided to take theirs home and then put it in the oven because that's what the history teacher says. Now what you could do is you could always use the T, or if you stick it under the grill for 5 minutes, then that'll sort out as well. And there was always one kid that came back and turned out they'd had a small fire in his kitchen because of his history homework, and now the parents really, really wanted to have a word with the headmaster about redecorating costs and stuff like that as well. How long was it before you moved away from Broken Shield and you got into Molecular, because was that not your first kind of proper foray into it, really?
I think we realised quite early on that Broken Shield wasn't going to be the first game we published.
Yeah.
It was the first one we kind of tried to make. But we kind of put it to one side after a couple of weeks of trying to put something together and not really getting anywhere. And then we sat down and we were like, well, rather than try and do something we don't really know enough about, we thought we were going to have to read loads of books, we're going to have to do loads of internet research, we're going to have to play loads of games. What a shame. But it's just going to take a lot of time to develop this. So let's sit down and think about something else. And then we thought, well, what do we know about? And we were like, okay, well, I'm doing a degree in engineering and you're doing a degree in chemistry. Can we make a game out of that? That'd be pretty easy. And it was literally that conversation that sparked the whole thing. And I was like, well, I wasn't really enjoying my degree at the time, so I was like, I don't really want to make anything out of engineering. This is boring.
Yeah.
So Matthew was like, well, I like chemistry. Let's do one out of that. So we fiddled away with, different sort of bits of chemistry that he was researching at the time. What kind of things he got excited about? Why were they interesting to him? And then I thought, well, so
you were still at university at this phase? Yeah.
Yeah, we're just sat in college room just chatting at this point.
Just what can we do? I don't know, I don't like my degree. Shall we do a board game? Yeah, let's do that. What about this Broken Shield thing? We don't talk about Broken Shield, Matthew, anymore.
Yeah, that's pretty much exactly how it went.
So you're doing the course, and how easy was Molecular to put together compared to what happened with Broken Shield? I should have come up with a different title for the show now.
Oh god, I don't even know how to answer that. I suppose it was hard in the sense that we knew we could do it, so we pushed ourselves a lot.
Yeah.
We got to a point where we realised, this is something we can work with. We didn't realise at that point probably that we were going to end up publishing it on Kickstarter and whatever, but we were like, this is a game we can finish. Mm-hmm. This is a project where the end is in sight. So I think to that degree, it made it quite difficult because we kind of had to finish it.
Okay.
Whereas with Broken Shield, it was we knew we were not really going to get there, so it's kind of, weren't really that enthusiastic about it in the end.
74 for Cortina, as I said.
Yeah,
exactly.
Look at
it, it's always sitting in the garage, Yeah. It's kind of waiting there for you. I mean, Molecular, is it commercially available at the moment, or is it something that do you still have copies of it? Is it still available for sale?
So we made the choice a while ago, basically when we were printing the stuff in China. Do we want to have this sort of, as our kind of headline product, this is our first game, this is the thing we're most excited about.
Yeah.
And we basically came to the conclusion, no. As much as we enjoyed making it, as much as we enjoyed playing it, it wasn't the best thing we could make.
Right.
I really like it, and it has a, kind of place in my heart, I want to say, it's the first thing that we did, but, it's not the most impressive game that we could have made, had we got the time and the money and the artwork and all that kind of stuff. We did all the graphic design ourselves.
Oh, right, okay.
And, that was a challenge in itself. We feel like we did a pretty good job of that considering. But, when, with compared to Statecraft, where we had, Zach, the professional designer and illustrator on it, there's a big difference in sort of visual quality at least. But yeah, so basically the long shot is that we've got about 20-30 copies left over, which we'll probably take to a few conventions and stuff and probably sell a few online, but we're not kind of, at the moment, we're not going to sell those copies, into mass release yet.
Okay.
We're probably going to do a re-release at some point in the next couple of years, with a print run of the expansions that we did the print and plays of. But that's a kind of something for the future, honestly.
So it funded, you put it on Kickstarter. So you went from absolutely nowhere to having a product to obviously doing these deals to get it up. Where did you get it printed across and manufactured in China then? Is that where you went for that, or was it homegrown?
So we went to China. So we originally tried to get a few UK companies on board. We thought that was probably going to be the easiest way to do it.
Yeah.
We learned very quickly that it wasn't. Anyone that prints board games knows that the only way to print them effectively is in China.
And why is that? Why is that? Because you're not you're not the first person to say that, and you're certainly not the last person to say that. And as I've seen on the Kickstarter group, the question comes up again and again and again that an artist, if you can get a local artist, that's brilliant, because you want to be able to have the feedback back and forward with the artist. But when it comes to printing and production, seems to be a bit of a struggle with actually having getting the product, I guess, kind of manufactured here in Blighty. What is the kind of, from your experience and from dealing with I guess a number of people involved in Kickstarter, is there a common theme as to why it's so difficult?
Price is the biggest one. I mean, if I could deal with, Joe Bloggs down the road in London, with a print factory the size of the ones in China, who I could ring up within my time zone, chat to someone who speaks fluent English, someone I've got a personal relationship with, and sort print issues out and go down and visit the factory, and that could all come at the price that I get it for in China, then happy days.
Yeah.
That'd be really convenient for me. Now, the people that are in the UK doing this are up against Chinese manufacturers with far more experience in terms of time that they've been doing this. You're talking about Chinese manufacturers have been now for decades doing mass manufacturing, not just printing posters and CVs off. You're dealing with a huge market in China. Like they all feed off each other. You've got one guy that just does dice. You've got one guy that does punchboard. Like one guy that does just the ink for the printers. So because the size of the businesses in China are so huge, because they've got such a lot of experience and say decades of time put into that business, that you can't really compete with it. Like if we were talking about printing businesses across the European Union starting to integrate more, if you had German companies, Dutch companies, British companies, French companies, all kind of working with each other, specializing in certain things, then you might be able to compete.
Yeah.
But print seems to be very localized in Europe. You've got people printing large amounts of stuff like flyers and posters and promotional stuff for companies in their own country.
Yeah.
But we're not a manufacturing country at all, so the prices don't compare. The quality is good, but it's not worth getting 10% better quality for 300% more price.
Yeah.
So it really comes down to the numbers, and a lot of people slate the Chinese companies and be like, if you get it from China, it's rubbish quality. Absolute rubbish. Like everything you buy is made in China.
Yeah.
Like pretty much, plus or minus a few oddments of things. If you buy anything manufactured, the likelihood is it's either made in Japan in like a ridiculously high-tech mobile phone factory type place.
Yeah.
Or it's made in probably one of state-of-the-art factories in the middle of Shanghai or Shenzhen or somewhere in China.
Yeah.
Possibly Hong Kong.
Have you been out there to China yourself? Is that?
I went a few years ago. Yeah, I used to. I did a short amount of work for a telecoms company near Hong Kong.
Yeah.
Which is a kind of story for another time. But that's a weird one. But yeah, I mean, people have this idea that Chinese companies make cheap tat because a lot of stuff they buy is hugely underproduced toys and stuff.
Well, listen, look, I work, as some people may know, obviously I'd love to do this full time, but my job is involved in kind of marketplaces like Amazon and eBay, and most people have this view that they're talking about getting over 15,000 kind of mobile phone cases sent to them from kind of Shanghai and places like that. So that's kind of the manufacturing side of things, but I'm more than aware that there's a massive amount of different stuff that is produced in these factories that people use on a day-to-day basis. On that bit, is that something that you guys would ever consider, kind of thinking, well, could we move into kind of a printing side of ITB? Could that be something that we could do, or is it just cost prohibitively always going to be?
I mean, the difficulty is that it's with print, because it's a bit of a weird business from what I understand of it, in that you've got the raw product, which is things like your kind of basic flat sheets of grey board, you paper, your ink, your printers, or whatever.
Yeah.
All the way up to some pretty high-end specialist equipment for cutting, for lasering, for CNC, for die cutting, for the kind of fairly niche kind of technical tools to produce something that looks like a modern board game. Molding, that kind of stuff. So you kind of got this really weird spectrum of things, and the Chinese factories can do it very cheaply because they've got other very big, very established, reaping the economies of scale companies that do all this kind of stuff. Whereas in the UK, there's just those things don't exist. You have to get a lot of it from specialist suppliers who are more expensive. Shipping between cities in Europe is more expensive. Labor is more expensive. Things like insurance and taxes and everything is more expensive. So although you can do it competitively on a small scale to other people in Europe, you just can't do it for mass manufacture. So I mean, the only other way of looking at it, I think, is the only successful business in the indie world that I know of that's in print that's not in China is GameCrafter.
Yes, and they're based in the US, aren't they?
Yeah, exactly. And I think that is something that the UK doesn't have, and Europe doesn't have, that it could, and I think would be very popular. Weirdly enough, it's actually cheaper to ship things from China to the UK and then back to Canada than it is to get it to the US and then over the border to Canada a lot of the time.
Oh, listen, shipping prices is one of the, we just spoke about shipping prices on the last podcast about trying to get anything shipped from America to the UK. But then on the other side of it, it's actually cheaper to get something shipped from the UK to Australia than it is to get something shipped from one side of Australia to the other. So that's why we have, that's why you get a lot of British sellers that sell to eBay Australia, because they can actually match the postage prices if people are kind of far enough away. So I know where you're coming from. I mean, going back to your story, so Molecular came out, it got funded. You ended up with about £17,000 worth of funding.
Yeah, it was. I think it was about, including all the pre-orders on back. I think it was closer to 20 grand in the end.
That's pretty cool.
Pretty good for a first try.
Yeah. What did you do? I just went out and got 20 grand worth of backing. There's a lot of guys that'll be going, Peter, my goodness, just goes out, makes a game about moleculars and chemistry, and look at him rolling in it.
I mean, to be fair, there's definitely been, in the last year at least, there's been, bigger projects, first timers. Like, I mean, they say Lewis Shaw's first one, downsized well over 30 grand. Kevin Young with Legends Untold. I mean, he's absolutely smashed it. Big props to the guy.
Kevin's coming back on another episode now. We had a chat quite recently, and we did joke about. He says, "Oh, I'm going to come back on for another episode." I says, "Well, we could call it the funded episode." And we didn't realise we should have been doing an episode 8 hours after he launched the project.
Yeah, definitely.
He's at what, 70?
Oh, he's about 70-something grand now.
72 million, 72,000.
Yeah, he's doing absolutely fantastically.
Which looks like it's heading towards the tens of millions. But he's done. I mean, he's done really, really well. But you doing that. I mean, did that mean? I mean, from your career point of view, when did Molecular get released? Was it last year or year before?
It's 2015.
Right,
so,
okay.
Yeah, it was like last year, basically.
Okay. Did that decide the career then? I mean, did you have to go and have a word with the parental units and kind of say, guess what? You're never going to guess.
I actually had that conversation not too long ago. So when we did Molecular, we made a bit of money. Like, we're not talking anything significant, really. It was enough to get us both a very generous set of Christmas presents for our families, and fund a little holiday each and that kind of thing. It's not mega bucks at all. We're talking a couple of grand a piece. Mm-hmm. Once we'd finished with everything, which was good considering it was our first project. We weren't expecting to make anything.
No,
because we didn't know how much things would cost really.
Well, I mean, this is what happens. You put money into a Kickstarter, you get a board game. You don't usually get anything else because once the stretch goals and stuff take over on it.
Yeah, exactly.
You're kind of like, you're lucky if you got enough to kind of eat your lunch. So Molecular comes out, and then, I mean, what's the steps into kind of like the inside the box? I mean, when did ITB? When did you sit down with Matthew and say, let's make a go of this and turn it into a business? or I mean, what was the next steps after that?
I think, weirdly enough, actually, ITB came first. So we had an original business partner as well, a guy called John, who did all the graphic design on Molecular.
Yeah.
Parted ways with him after a while, so he sort of went on to do other things. But one of the things we all kind of sat down, the three of us, and we said, well, none of us have any money, basically. None of us have a pot of cash we can rely on if things go skywards. So we have to make sure we're protected. We've got to do what we can to make sure we're not going to end up bankrupting ourselves before we've even graduated. So we decided to set up a limited partnership to kind of recognise that we were all kind of in it together. And so if someone sued the company, we wouldn't end up losing everything we had. What limited assets we did have. So it's basically kind of a sensible legal decision, I want to say, at the start that made the company. And obviously we had to come up with a name. Then we...
Yeah, where did that come from? Let's talk about this, because if I've heard anything, I've been in sales for 20 years now. I'm old. I'm probably old enough to be your dad. There's an episode coming up quite soon where I am made to feel extremely old, thanks to a certain gentleman that you know quite well, and nobody else knows about, but that's... And I've been told, what you got to do, right, guys? If you're going to be selling or you're going to be doing anything or any kind of blue sky thinking where we get around and discuss our ideas and make them float, is we want to be thinking outside the box. So where did they come from? Was it because of that? Was it because?
Yeah. It was I want to say a reaction against that, because we just sat down and thinking, what kind of thing could we do? And we don't want to pin down the company too much because we don't really know when. Are we going to wrap this up after one project? Is it going to completely fail? Or are we going to do well out of this? We don't know what we're going to do with it. So we wanted something that was, fairly general, but still kind of on point. It wasn't going to be a kind of fantasy games limited, that kind of thing. So we don't know if we're going to make any of them.
I know. Get you the troll and orc or something.
Yeah, exactly. We just didn't really know where we were going to go with it. So we thought something that's gamesy but not too specific. And then we just kind of started chatting on, something about games, boxes, whatever, and then outside the box, and then we're like, oh no, someone's done that already, it's a bit bland. And then we thought, inside the box, and we thought, oh, actually, that's quite funny. The idea that we're talking about things, we're thinking about what's going into the game, we're thinking about what is inside the box, what's kind of contained within that cube of artwork, what's going on inside it. And it was kind of, I want to say, people, it's a bit more highfalutin, but I suppose, people keep, thinking outside the box and kind of forgetting that there is something inside it.
That's very Schrödinger.
Yeah, a little bit.
I don't know whether to open the box to see if Peter is still alive or Peter is dead.
Just waffling on about crazy stuff as always. But it's basically just, kind of drunken spitballing conversation at uni, and we just decided that was what we were going to go with. If you really want to laugh, you should look at our original logo. If you go on the Facebook page and click on the sort of profile picture and go back a few, you can see that our first attempt at a logo, which is... rubbish. It was pretty bad.
What we'll do is we'll make sure that we put... You know what we're going to do? Going to use it for the art for the episode.
Excellent.
I'm really considering that. I might actually do that because I think that would be a little bit of fun. So, did you graduate?
Yeah, so this is the bit where I got a bit mental, really. So I finished my exams on a Saturday, and then had it's a thing, like a sort of dinner thing that we did with our tutors. So was it? Yeah, it was a Saturday. So we did that on the Saturday night. We had this dinner with our tutors, like kind of celebratory meal thing, which was quite nice. And then my girlfriend took me on holiday to Poland for 2 days from that night, which was really nice. It was really cool. So we did that on that night. So finished my exams on the Saturday morning, got horribly drunk with my mates, then went to this dinner, then we went to Poland for 2-3 days, and then got back on I can't remember when it was a Tuesday or something, and then moved house, got into the new place, and then we launched the project. Molecular, that was. All within the space of like a week, which was a bit crazy. And it was me and Matthew just like there for like 48 hours straight, just like boshing Red Bull, trying to like get everything finished on time. So we'd like promised everyone a particular date.
Is it true? Is it true? And is it true that the Kickstarter is absolutely fantastic as a platform, but in terms of letting you know which buttons and stuff you've got to press?
Oh my god, yeah. It's a nightmare. Like it's a really well built platform. Like, don't get me wrong. Like there's been some serious work put into that. But like things like letting you know if you press the button, does it actually launch the project? Right.
Was there not that question on the Facebook page quite recently?
Yeah.
And for everybody who's listening, there is because I am, and me and Colin are both a bit fans of kind of like the UK kind of board game scene in general. There's the UK, as I say, there's a UK kind of Kickstarter page, but it brings up a lot of these kind of, it's like 17 questions you were afraid to ask about Kickstarter kind of thing.
Yeah,
and the best one was, I think it was actually maybe Kevin, who went, if I press this button, do we go live? Or what actually happens? Asking for a friend.
Yeah.
Oh, it was absolutely brilliant.
No, it happens all the time. I mean, there's a lot of stuff like that. You just kind of like, I mean, we just kind of threw ourselves at it and made a bunch of really stupid mistakes, and then just kind of went, it's fine. Like, we'll just fix it as we go.
Yeah,
like,
it'll be all right.
Yeah.
It'll be. Of course, I was sure. That's why I pressed yes 5 times. Yeah. It's all okay.
Yeah.
So you've moved. You've launched Molecular. Molecular is a success. Are you bothering to get I mean, you mentioned telecoms and you said it's a fantastic story for another time, so we'll save that for another time. Do you have a CV? Did you bother with a CV, or did you just say, right, okay, we've started the company, let's see where it goes?
So at this point, we were still fairly fairly skeptical about the idea. Like we did a thing, we enjoyed doing it, we had a great time, developing the game, doing the Kickstarter, talking to the backers and doing all that stuff. It was ridiculously stressful. Like, there was a lot of pressure on us to deliver. And fortunately we did. We got a lot of happy backers, about 500 of them or so. Got a lot of very good reviews of the game, and we were really pleased with that. But at that point, we didn't have enough money to just decide to start the company. Like, you said, neither of us really had a chunk of money we could kind of rest on for a while.
Yeah.
So Matthew went back up to our kind of homeland in the north. We're both from Cumbria originally.
All right, okay.
So he went back up there and started looking for some work up there. And I stayed in Oxford, worked for the student union for a year. But I did that part-time.
You just hung around the student union?
Pretty much, yeah.
As a barman and occasional drunk. It's £10 to get in here, mate.
Famously, the Oxford Student Union doesn't have a bar. It's a bit of a weird one, because all the colleges basically have their own like mini student union.
Oh right, okay.
So the actual like student union is basically just an office. It's kind of boring.
That sounds kind of boring.
But yeah, so I worked for them for a year.
Cool.
As,
okay.
Like a part-time, like I was helping the had like a student fundraising group, and I was like basically looking after them. So doing all the sort of fundraising coordination and all sorts of bits and bobs of things. So I did that part-time, which gave me enough kind of money to live off just about, and basically did the sort of game stuff part-time, in whatever was left of my spare time. Sort of seeing if I could make a go of it, and the idea was after a year, if I couldn't really do anything with it, I was just going to kill it off and like maybe get a full-time job and just do it as a kind of side hobby kind of thing. And
what did the parents think of this then?
I think they were pretty concerned, to be honest, that I was going to just like
like we spent 4 years. You spent 6 years before that getting the exam results to get in. It was Oxford you went to, yeah?
Yeah.
So you spent 6 years getting the degree, getting the results to get into Oxford, and then you spent 4 years at Oxford, and now you want to do things with bloody cardboard.
Yeah, I mean, like, they were like relatively supportive, I want to say, like considering it's a bit weird.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, at the time, I didn't really know what I was going to be doing.
Nah.
because I didn't really enjoy my degree. I didn't really want to do engineering.
95% of everybody that graduates, you know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, no, it's just kind of sort of keeping my options open, I suppose. And then kind of when I sort of came up with the next project, Statecraft, that was basically my baby, really, through the year. I'm massively interested in politics. Me and my friend Matthew, we spent ages talking about all sorts of stuff while we were at uni. And we're kind of really deep into the weird corners of the internet, articles about niche political things. And we thought, is this something, can we translate our interest of this kind of stuff to a game?
Yeah.
And then we kind of, by chance, kind of realized that this is exactly the same conversation we had about Molecular. It's what are we interested in? What are the things that excite us? And what can we be enthusiastic about? And when we realized that was kind of almost like the secret sauce, it was once we had that conversation again, we realized, and then we just went for it with that one. Went crazy with Statecraft.
Because Statecraft ended up funding even more than Molecular. I mean, it went on to almost sub 40k. So it was a great success, 1,000 backers, and
it was brilliant. Yeah, I mean the fun story again, something for a fun thing to probably put on the link or whatever, is the first campaign. So we ran it the first time, fell completely flat on our face, and got about $6,000 of the 15 we needed. We just failed to communicate what it was that was interesting about the game. Why it was that people wanted to buy it. We didn't really explain to people why we were excited about it.
Yeah.
So we went away for 3 months, rehashed every single thing about the campaign we could manage. We went to Expo, did a big preview there. We had a couple of demo tables, put our heart and souls into it. And I took the risky move of putting my savings into it as well, which was ill-advised, though successful.
It's a bit of a gamble.
Yeah, it was a bit, and I was a little bit worried about it, obviously. But we did that, and it worked. Obviously, it did a lot better. Got nearly 40 grand. Got about another 5 grand on pre-orders as well.
Do you think that because the landscape at the moment was all about was quite politicised? I mean, let's face it, the last couple of years have been highly politicised. Do you think that helped with you obviously did your general election, and then you had independence vote, and then you've had the the Brexit vote, the EU referendum, because I'm going to use Brexit, and then you've had obviously the American elections. Do you think that helped push people in?
I think it did, and I think we were lucky in that the campaigns around the general election, the EU referendum, the American election, were all pretty toxic.
Yes.
I mean, I've only been around for as a navel for 2 British elections and a couple of American ones, and I don't want to say I'm pretty shocked by how horrendous it's got. I remember the second Obama election. It was all about Obama remaining kind of statesman-like and Mitt Romney being kind of Republican yet statesman-like. He didn't exactly seem like the kind of evil Sith Lord that a lot of people describe Republican politicians as being. But now you've got Donald Trump saying horrendous things about pretty much anyone he can think of, which was not ideal. And a lot of people obviously not exactly fans of Hillary Clinton either.
Yeah, I know that was the kind of I mean that's the kind of thing. I mean, political. We don't go down the political route ourselves on the podcast because I don't know. As we have always said, there's enough podcasts talking about these things about it. But yeah, I mean, I think it was the first time potentially where you could say I don't like either of them.
Yeah, exactly. I think a lot of people had some very strong views on either end. I don't want to say, I don't want to kind of reveal my own views on it. But I think we were lucky in the sense that when we launched the campaign was about 2 or 3 weeks before the EU referendum. So there was actually, I want to say there was actually quite a lot of hope at that point. Regardless of which side of the sort of the kind of argument you fall down on, people were hopeful that the thing that they wanted to happen would happen. And they were quite excited about the idea of a referendum in that everyone can get involved, everyone can vote, everyone's empowered to do something political.
Yeah.
And similarly with the American election, there were a lot of people were saying, go out and vote, do what you want to do, kind of, express your view, whatever it is. So I think we were lucky in that sense that politics at the time had quite a positive connotation.
Yeah.
People feeling like they could do something.
Yeah.
After the referendum, we released a supranational union expansion, which went down incredibly well, despite a lot of sort of, again, sort of angry conversation about the topic in general. I think we were quite lucky there as well, to be honest. But I think it did definitely, I want to say, it brought politics as a subject to the fore. And it made people aware that it's a thing and a thing that should matter to them, even if they don't agree with the politicians that are around them, or they don't like the choices. It's something that does make a difference to something.
Yeah. No. I mean,
and it gave the game a bit more of a kind of, I want to say, meaning to it, which is what we're aiming for. So yeah.
And definitely. I've certainly seen on Kickstarter in certain places kind of things getting a little bit more, political in terms of their involvement in kind of board games and stuff like that as well. So Statecraft funds, and you get it out there, and everybody's kind of happy. And then, where'd you go? I mean, what did you do next? I mean, was this you officially rolling and running with ITB as an official company with offices and stuff like that? What happened after there?
I mean, I cracked open a bottle of champagne.
Breathed a sigh of relief.
Yeah.
Cried at the Kickstarter fees.
It was a weird moment, to be honest. So I launched the campaign in the last month, the second successful campaign, in the last month of my job that I had with the student union. And so I was kind of completely unemployed, had no idea what I was going to do. I'd applied to a few jobs. Me and my partner decided we were moving to London, so I was kind of applying for jobs in London, kind of knew that I was going to be moving to the city, but didn't know really what I was going to be doing there. And kind of Statecraft had done really well, and I've made a reasonable amount of money out of it, enough to kind of live off for a few months, kind of keep myself going with it. And then I got a very good job offer, and I kind of had to think very carefully about what I was doing. At the time, I was spending pretty much every day, all day, doing Statecraft stuff. I was talking to Zach, our artist, about doing all the stretch goal content. I was talking to the manufacturers, the shipping companies, like all this kind of stuff. I was really, really deep into it and absolutely loving it. And it was like, do I take the risk and keep doing this, or do I take this very good job offer and something very respectable, kind of well paid and whatnot, kind of very stable job. And chatted it through with friends and family and stuff, and decided that I wanted to sack off the respectable job and do the thing that I actually enjoyed doing, which was a difficult choice.
And just let your beard get bigger as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Because that is an impressive beard you've got. Just so we've got it on record.
It comes and goes. I'm currently at about 30% beard.
It's 30% beard power. I need to recharge my beard. Is there like a little USB cable at the bottom? You kind of
just kind of open a flap and
plug it in. Yeah. Unfortunately, you need it changed because it uses like the old PlayStation 3 type USB one, which is more difficult to get hold of than the micro one that everybody uses instead. Yeah. You get into the situation where you're caught at 10% beard, and then folk just say, you could have that off with a rough towel, son.
Oh, no, exactly. I mean, there was one funny thing actually when I went to UKG, and I had to have my beard there because all my social media profiles, all the posts I'd done and everything were of me with a beard. So I was like, I can't shave it off because no one's going to recognise me.
Oh dear.
So I ended up with this ridiculous shaggy thing attached to my face for a couple of weeks. But no.
You never thought of going down the thing with is it Samuel Jackson and Jackie Brown where he's got beads in it?
No, I don't think I'd really rock the pirate look, to be honest. So,
or are you going to do baubles for Christmas?
It's not a bad idea.
I saw that a couple of years ago, and I think it was baubles for your beard, and this is like these tiny little baubles that you attach into your beard to make you look Christmassy.
Excellent.
But I could just imagine if you got drunk enough and fell on your face.
That sounds painful.
That would just be... And you're adding weight. Because beards can be big, but they're generally quite light, and you don't notice them after a while unless they're wet. They're like your normal hair. kind of thing. So I can imagine adding baubles or anything like that. I mean, obviously you'd have to go for meeples.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Without a doubt, you have to do it this Christmas. Christmas meeples for the beard. ITB. We want to see photographs, Peter.
I'll make sure to send it to you.
So, I mean, moving on. As you say, you've decided to take the plunge. Where are you going from here then? What's the kind of the plans now?
So, yeah, I mean, I guess the
you've
kind
got
of
staff, haven't you? I mean, I've looked at your site. You've actually got, this isn't just the case of, it's a couple of guys hanging around an office saying, well, should we do a bit of work today? I mean, you guys, you've got staff, you've got people out there kind of doing stuff on a day-to-day basis. So what are you up to now?
Well, I guess the kind of the main thing for us was that, like, if we're going to do it, we're going to do it properly. We haven't got the money to mess around. We can't just keep kind of dipping into savings and whatnot. So it's like, if we're going to actually go for it, we need to do this like full tilt. So I'm down in London. We've managed to find somewhere. It's actually live in the office as well. It's like a sort of office flat combo thing. So we managed to find somewhere that we could afford to get that had a decent size space for the office. So they've got plenty of space to spread out. We can host events here. It's perfect, basically. It's really well connected in London, and like it's got masses of space and it's really open and stuff. So it's me and intern Anthony at the moment, deal with partners and other sort of members of the team sort of flit in and out when they're here. But yeah, it's basically we just wanted to go for it and really work out what it is we wanted to achieve, and then just do it. Basically, it's just like, we've got to work hard at it, and if it doesn't work, we can always do something else. We can always get a regular job.
Something to tell the grandkids, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
What
if
did
it doesn't
you do
work
between
out,
2015 and 2027? It's like, well, up until everything became flipping VR and virtual, I used to make board games.
And they're like, what's one of them?
Exactly. Put on the virtual reality headset, and I'll show you, and we'll step in, and it'll be. Do you know what it'll be? First game on VR. It'll be Settlers of flipping Catan, and you'll actually be walking around as a meeple, or it'll be Carcassonne or something like that, and you'll actually have to wander about the fields, and there'll be people that'll be like collapsing of exhaustion because you realise that actually sticking a meeple down on a board is a lot different between walking the 5 virtual kilometres to actually sit yourself there, and that's why the meeples are lying down.
Yeah.
It's not because they haven't claimed the land, it's because in reality they've walked for miles and they're now very tired. You can just imagine that'll be virtual reality, Settlers of Catan, and I will still not have played it.
Excellent.
But no, I mean, obviously you've gone serious. What kind of makes up a day? I mean, what is the kind of stuff that you're getting involved in?
It's not as glamorous as you'd think it is. Obviously I knew this anyway, because I was basically working full-time over the summer anyway, before we kind of settled here.
Yeah.
But it's basically a lot of emails. Because my sort of background of doing things is basically in project management, so I kind of structured the whole thing like a lot of projects. And it's lots of making sure your documents are organized, doing Google Drives, putting things together, keeping lists of stuff, emailing people, Facebook messages, sending letters to people, making documents ready for retailers, planning out Kickstarter pages. We obviously we deal with a lot of creatives, artists, illustrators, designers, video producers, all sorts of different people, sculptors even. And they have very complicated schedules, demands on their time. A lot of people in different time zones. We've got people in about 7 different countries working on stuff at the moment. And that takes a lot of organization to keep everything ticking over efficiently and making sure things are on time and, you're getting the right stuff and no one messes it up too much and wastes a lot of time. So I spend probably about 60-70% of my day sat in front of my computer, basically writing documents, spreadsheets, emails most of the time, which sounds proper boring. It's not too bad. Most of it's interesting stuff. But I mean, do people come to you for advice? Do you
offer them consultancy, or are you just continually ploughing out kind of new ideas for board games?
It's kind of a mix of all sorts, really. I mean, I haven't charged for advice at all. I'm kind of reluctant to get into that game. Other people do it. Other people do sort of consultancy for projects and, make a good crust out of it, and people are very satisfied with what they do. But I think for me, like, I got into this to make games, and I got into this to kind of make stuff. And for me personally, like, the consultancy angle, while it's a very lucrative business and it's something that can add a lot of value, it's not really for me. I think, like, I design games myself. Now we're moving into publishing other people's games. So Subterra is our sort of first big title that's been published been designed by someone else. A guy called Tim Pinder, absolute genius game designer. But yeah, I think for me it's about kind of the kind of satisfaction of making a thing, whatever it is, whether it's making an event happen, making a game, making a graphic novel, making a book. It's that really kind of attracted me to this in the first place, and I think that's kind of where we're going with it. Is can we make more good stuff? People
should come to you if they are interested in making stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
Good stuff.
Yeah, we want to make good stuff that makes you think. Basically, I think things like that's the kind of the key sort of idea behind it all. I mean, there's something about the slogan thing. The slogan we've gone with is "Play with ideas." It's pretty corny, but
it's a good slogan.
We're thinking, that's the thing that made us excited about Molecular, about Statecraft, about our original idea for Broken Shield, about Subterra, about the games we've got coming up for the rest of the year. They're all about kind of interesting conversations we've had, about pretty much anything. And we're going, you know what, this is a really interesting thing. Like, we're excited about this. Like, there's something in this, and like, if you can think of it, you can make a game of it. Like, basically,
isn't that the thing? Isn't it? I mean, that's the wonderful thing about board games.
Exactly.
Would you like to play a game about power stations? Are you daft? No. Here's Power Grid.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Would you like
efficient
to play a game
train
about
networks?
Trains?
Yeah.
Oh, well, what would you want? Well, there's an actual game called Trains you can play. Or you can play Ticket to Ride, or if you want to do Ticket to Ride and sailing, we've now got rails and sails. I don't like that. I prefer bacteria. Well, maybe pandemic issue.
Yeah, exactly.
And there's pretty much kind of like, we've played and we've covered quite a lot of board games on We're Not Wizards, and there's a lot of games we've played which you would like to cover, and if you actually sat down and totted up the different subjects that people actually make board games about, it's
staggering.
It is. I mean, and there's another episode of me and Colin coming up soon, but I think the last game that we talked about was YS, which was about jewellery, being in the jewel trade. So it's actually fantastic. For the future, I mean, one of the things, as we say, we talked about, we've talked about where we are just now and where you'd like to be. Obviously, for the future for yourselves, one of the things that we always kind of mention on We're Not Wizards is the kind of the shout out stuff. Is there anything that you would like to kind of mention that's going to be coming out or is present at the moment that you want to make the good listeners aware of?
Sure. I mean, so we've been pretty busy. So we've got the pre-order shop for Statecraft open at the moment. So if you missed out on the campaign there, you can get the Kickstarter prices for pretty much everything on there. I think we unlocked about 7 expansions off the top of my head on the campaign, which is pretty great. I really enjoyed making them all. Thank you, backers. I had a great time doing that.
What else you got coming up? You mentioned Subterra.
Yeah, so that's the next big blockbuster. So Statecraft was my kind of baby for a year. Subterra has been the baby for this year, I want to say. We had a bit of a weird one when we went to Expo, which is our first time we went to Expo actually this year. I've been to all sorts of different games conventions before, never actually been to Expo itself. Got a stand, did well with Statecraft even, and one of the things that I got involved in was the Wyvern's Lair, which is basically a Dragon's Den style presentation event where people come and after they've been sort of filtered out and as a kind of kind of short list.
Yeah.
People present their cool new game idea to a panel of judges, and I was lucky enough to be chosen to be one of the judges, which was shocking, but awesome. So it was myself, Lewis Shaw from Braincrack Games. There was Alex Yeager from Mayfair, Duncan Malloy from Osprey, a chap from Spiral Galaxy Games whose name escapes me. Yeah, Duncan's great.
Duncan's brilliant. We did an interview with Duncan about Escape from Colditz, and
brilliant.
Just as a quick aside, there is a copy of Escape from Colditz coming to me very, very soon.
Excellent.
Which I treated myself for Christmas. So
brilliant.
I'm quite excited about that. Yeah, he's a top guy. So there was guy from Spiral Galaxy you were saying. Sorry.
Yeah, and the sort of the big name is there was Christian Peterson from FFG.
Oh yeah.
Who was pretty grumpy actually. Didn't take to him too well, but
did he have beard envy?
Potentially, maybe he's just very, very jealous of my beard.
Did he have a beard?
He didn't know. He was perfectly clean shaven. He's very well presented.
That's what it'll be then. He's probably. Do you know what's happened? He's gone out, and before he's went out, his wife said to him, "You're not going out with your face looking like that."
But the guys like it, It's
he's
like
taking
that kind of
upstairs,
vibe.
have a shave.
So
he's come in and he's sat next to somebody who's just throwing their beard in his face.
Absolutely.
Oh, it's a shame he was. No, I mean, obviously we're not gonna. I don't want to speak ill of the man because
I think he's just had a bit of a long day.
An email to him and say, we run a podcast called We're Not Wizards, and I don't speak in this voice at all. So that would be kind of cool. But yeah, so who? Kevin Young mentioned Werven's Lair.
Yeah, so he was one of the presenting, I want to say teams there with his business partner presenting Legends Untold. And I think he actually got some interest from a few judges as well, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
But obviously he decided to go his own way, and that's done very well for him, which is great. It's really exciting to see that someone's decided that don't get kind of dazzled by the publishers if you think you can do it yourself and do it your own way. And,
yeah, absolutely.
Massive amount of respect for that.
No, absolutely, absolutely.
But yeah, while we were there, one of the projects that was presented was Subterra by Tim. He did an incredibly compelling presentation. What I thought was very compelling, very clear. He had a very clear vision for the game, what it was going to be, why it was going to be that way. The game was clearly very thoughtfully designed. Had like a clear sense of purpose, like the actions that you were taking in the game connected very well to the theme. You had a lot of very interesting decisions to make. It wasn't complicated to understand, but it had a lot of depth. So it's kind of hitting all the right notes, basically. For something at least that we wanted to publish. So myself and, as it turns out, a few of the other publishers approached him at the end.
Oh, right, okay.
And I went over him and basically said to him, I would like to publish your game. Here's my business card. So he looked a bit shocked that someone had said that. I think probably less shocked as more and more people came across and said the same thing. But then after a bit of sort of negotiation and back and forth with Tim, he decided to publish with us. So now we kind of, 6 months later after reams of art development and, game playtesting and promotional stuff and kind of really getting the concept refined to, sharp edge, we're releasing that in January on Kickstarter. So to kind of tell you a little bit about what the game actually is, it's a cooperative survival horror game where you and a bunch of sort of professionals have been sent into an unexplored cave network by this mysterious company. You're not really sure why you're mapping this cave network out. You assume it's for some kind of mining or something. You don't really ask too many questions, and you get into this cave network and you fall down into the bottom levels of this cave. You can't see an obvious way out. There's no immediate exit route. And you have to find your way out of this horrifying, hazardous, dark, terrifying cave network before the batteries run out on your flashlights and you're lost in the darkness forever. And it's basically you start off in this kind of partially lit bit of this tunnel with a kind of huddle of cavers together. You have to procedurally generate your cave and try and explore your way out. While trying not to die as a result of being attacked by floods, cave-ins, rough terrain, gas leaks, and the kind of tagline bit of you, and you don't think you're alone down here. Things that come after you.
It sounds like a good day out for the kids.
Oh yeah, definitely. Good, clean fun. But it probably the best way to explain it is think Pandemic meets the film The Descent. So it's kind of dark, unsettling horror with a good kind of co-op feel. So it's a good game. It's very neat. It gets very quick as well, which is good. So you're doing a lot of actions awesome. In your kind of your 45 minutes to an hour slot of time. You don't always win. It's a hard game. Some co-op games can be a bit too easy. They kind of for want of not making people feel a bit kind of outdone.
Yeah.
But I think it strikes a good balance between being a good challenge and being possible.
Cool.
And it has all sorts of difficulty levels. And we've got 3 expansions planned for the Kickstarter as well, which add all sorts of extra stuff in. We've got minis as an upgrade. We've got art prints. One of the cool things, actually, I think probably the coolest thing about the sort of offerings of the project is that we're doing custom miniatures. So for it's a reasonable amount of money, but for a couple £100, you can get the sculptor. We'll commission the sculptor to make a miniature of you as a character in the game.
That's
and you'll
very
get
tempting, isn't it?
A copy.
You've got it.
Yeah, and you'll get a copy of this sent to you, along with obviously a copy of the game and everything. And you also get, be 3D printed, high quality miniature, the same scale of all the ones in the game. And you also get a statuette, sort of blown up version of it as well.
Oh, I can imagine that. Me showing my grandkids that.
Yeah.
Look at this. It's a kind of slightly rotund, slightly balding, ugly looking man. Who is that? That's me. Go to your room.
Excellent.
When's it out? Did you say February?
Sorry, January. So we're planning.
Right, that's next month.
Planning on the 10th of January. So if all goes well, it'll be live on Kickstarter 8 AM 10th of January British time. But it's all going pretty well at the moment. I just had a conversation with the team today because we've got Tim, the illustrator, David Campos, graphic novelist David Fialison. Because we're doing a kind of accompanying graphic novel to kind of map out the story of the sort of what's going on in the game.
That's good.
The sculptor Nassos and Zach, the graphic designer who did the Statecraft stuff as well. And everything's going pretty well at the moment, which is good. So I think we're going to have a pretty strong campaign, I hope.
And do you have a price for that?
At the moment, it's looking between £20-25 for the core game.
Really?
So it's going to be on the low end.
That is.
Price.
Yeah.
And it's a pretty solid game. You got about 70 tiles, 8 caver boards, sort of player map boards. Meeples tokens. You've got a sort of deck of what we call the hazard cards, the sort of things that happen in the cave.
That's a ridiculously reasonable price because I've seen card games that have gone for that amount for about 20-25 quid. I've seen some kind of American kind of bigger card games going for about $30, which nowadays is about 25 quid.
Yeah, exactly.
You've got quite a lot. Well, I mean, we shall keep an eye out on it on the We're Not Wizards, and make sure when it's out there, we shall give it a little bit of a shout out or a mention when it does come out.
That'd be very much appreciated.
That's fine. Speaking of shout outs as well, as I mentioned earlier, we offer people the chance to give a shout out. But if they want to find you on the internet, if they've listened tonight and they've went, or listened during the day or first thing in the morning or the afternoon, I do not decide your listening podcast schedule. It's entirely up to you. But if they have listened and they've thought, this has been quite interesting, because we have I hope we've delved quite deep into the kind of the process and stuff like that. If people want to find you, where would they find you? How do they find you? What's the best place to?
The easiest thing to do is drop me an email. I have completely public email address at contact@itbboardgames.com.
Cool.
If you want to chat, you want to find out more about board game publishing, if you've got a cool game idea, if you're an illustrator, a designer, if you just want to get involved, if you're in the London area and you want to do some work, there's always stuff for us to get people to do.
Cool.
Then drop me an email. Catch me on Facebook, Twitter, whatever else works.
Are you on? What are you on Facebook? Is there a particular people should look for?
Easiest thing to do: look for Inside the Box Board Games on
Cool.
Facebook. Just search it; it'll come up. You'll see the little red hexagon.
Cool. And what about the Twitters?
Twitter's just at ITB Board Games. So again, just give me a shout if you want to chat. I don't know. You got a cool idea. You want to bring something to our attention. You want to shout horrible things at us. I don't know. Whatever floats your boat.
Well, you've got the and obviously as I've mentioned a couple of times, you've got the kind of the UK Kickstarter page as well, which you've been responsible not only for kind of getting everyone together, but kind of building a miniature community for kind of helping people out. So we'll put a little link into that as well. It's growing on a day-to-day basis, and it's interesting to see so many creative people, taking something that was maybe a sketch on a notepad or something that they thought about in the middle of the night or something, and actually make it a reality. So there's some great people on there. There's a few people that have ended up on We're Not Wizards through that,
exactly.
which is good. As for us, if you want to keep an eye on what we're up to and what we're doing, we are on Twitter. It's We're Not Wizards. We're on Facebook. It's We're Not Wizards. You can get us on Instagram. We've got about 10 photos now.
Oh, we got one of them as well.
Steadily increasing. Might be 11 by the end of the night. And that is in We're Not Wizards. You can email us. It's magic@we'renotwizards.com or .co.uk. If you go to iTunes, you can find us on there by searching for We're Not Wizards as well. Subscriptions are always nice because that bumps us up the list. Reviews are even nicer. So if you like what you hear tonight, jump us a little bit of a review. It always again helps get the word of the podcast out there as well. Peter, this has been, for me, it's been fascinating because you've kind of got quite a presence in terms of running the couple of successful Kickstarter campaigns that you have. Obviously, taking the plunge and starting a board game company. For a lot of people, that would be a bit of a kind of a dream job to be involved in the creative process. So it's been very interesting, and I've had an awful lot of fun as well. And I hope,
Great, me too.
I hope you've enjoyed yourself as well.
Yeah, definitely.
As normal, there is only one more thing for everybody to remember, and that is that we are many things, but we're not wizards. Are we wizards, Peter?
Definitely not wizards.
Absolutely not. We are many things. We are maybe deep-sea exploring miners. Or maybe we're running a political campaign or even a board game company, but we don't use magic. But listen, no, thanks again for coming on. I really appreciate your time. All that's left to do is for everybody to say goodbye. So it's a goodbye from Peter.
That's a goodbye from me.
And it's a goodbye from me. I've been Richard. Again, thank you for listening. Take care. Always roll sixes, and we shall speak to you very soon. Goodbye.